Hey everyone, and welcome back. You wanted to take a deep dive into Nietzsche. Well, more specifically, into his ideas about finding your true self.
Yeah, his ideas can be a bit of a challenge.
That's why we're here. To unpack some of those ideas, we have this video essay we're looking at today. And it breaks Nietzsche's philosophy down into 4 key steps to help you apply his thinking to your own life.
A roadmap for self-discovery, I guess you could say.
Okay, so step 1 is all about ditching what Nietzsche calls the herd mentality.
Yeah.
Have you ever been in a meeting and somebody cracks a joke? And it's not really that funny,
Oh, yeah.
but everyone else is laughing, so you just sort of, chuckle along to it.
You don't want to be the only one not laughing.
Exactly. It's like this unspoken pressure to just go along with the group, not wanting to rock the boat. And Nietzsche was really wary of that, wasn't he?
Oh, absolutely. He believed this pressure to conform, even if it goes against your own individuality, can be a huge obstacle to self-discovery.
It's like we're on autopilot, following these unwritten rules without even questioning them.
Right. And the video essay makes this point really well with a few examples. Like, think about Galileo.
Oh yeah, being persecuted for daring to challenge the accepted view of the universe.
Right. Or even on a more everyday level. Think about how many kids get picked on in school just for being different. That fear of standing out, of not being accepted by the group. It can be really powerful stuff.
Yeah, and the thing is, that pressure doesn't just disappear when we become adults.
Oh, no, not at all. I mean, sure, maybe we're not worried about getting teased on the playground anymore, but it definitely can manifest in much subtler ways.
Absolutely. It can show up in, how we choose a career, the relationships we pursue.
Even the values we hold, right? We end up making choices based on what society deems acceptable or successful, not necessarily what truly resonates with us.
Which is a pretty unsettling thought when you really stop and think about it.
Yeah.
So have you ever felt that pressure to conform? Maybe in a way that made you silence your own voice or ignore your gut feeling? Take a second to think about that. Because that pressure, that's what Nietzsche wants us to break free from.
And that's where step 2 comes in, which is where things get really interesting. Nietzsche didn't exactly sugarcoat the process of self-discovery, did he?
No, not at all. He actually believed it's a difficult, often lonely journey.
Right. Not exactly what you hear from those follow your bliss self-help gurus out there.
Totally different message. This video essay actually links this idea to one of Nietzsche's own essays, Schopenhauer as Educator, where he basically argues that real growth happens when we choose the more difficult path, the one that leads us away from comfort and familiarity.
Pushing past our comfort zones.
And there's this example about how we react to things. Like, instead of just complaining when something bothers us, Nietzsche actually encourages us to be more conscious of our reactions. Take a step back, examine why we're feeling that way, and then choose a more deliberate response.
So it's about taking ownership of yourself.
Yeah.
Your thoughts and your emotions.
And that can sometimes mean going against the grain, right? Challenging the expectations that society puts on us.
Right. And I think that's a big difference between what Nietzsche's talking about and what a lot of modern self-help focuses on.
Oh, yeah, I see what you mean. A lot of self-help is about, achieving external success.
Yeah.
Fitting into the system and climbing the ladder.
Right. But Nietzsche's talking about something much deeper, isn't he?
He's interested in authenticity, even if it comes at a cost.
Yeah.
So that brings up a big question. What are you, the listener, willing to sacrifice? What challenges might you have to face? Because this journey, this self-discovery thing, it's not going to be easy.
No, but that leads us right into step 3. And this is where Nietzsche tackles the big one. How do we find meaning? Especially in a world without religion.
Right, that's something a lot of people grapple with even today. So what was Nietzsche's answer to this?
So the video essay, it highlights 3 potential solutions. And what's really interesting is how different they are from each other. The first one is to embrace the humanities.
So art, literature, music, things like that.
Exactly. Nietzsche felt that these can provide us with a framework, a way to understand our lives and find meaning. But, and this is important, the essay really emphasizes that we can't just passively consume these things. Like just reading a book and setting it down.
Right, we have to actively engage with them, let them challenge our thinking.
Absolutely. It's like having a conversation with the art, the literature, the music, whatever it is, not just passively absorbing information.
I like that, a conversation with art. Okay, so what about the other solutions?
Right. So the second one is one of those classic Nietzschean concepts, becoming the Übermensch.
Ubermensch.
Yeah, often translated as like Overman or Superman.
So like becoming Batman.
Haha. Maybe not literally,
Okay.
but the idea is it's about that individual who defines their own purpose, creates their own values, without needing to rely on external sources. The essay uses examples like Julius Caesar and the Buddha.
Wow, okay.
But the point is, to inspire us to strive for self-mastery, self-determination. Even if we don't all become supermen, we can still embrace that spirit of creating our own values and breaking free from the limitations of, conventional morality.
Okay, so it's aspirational,
Yeah.
even if it's a little bit intimidating. But what about the third solution? You mentioned that one might be your favorite.
Yeah. So that one's called amor fati. It's Latin.
Fun.
Yeah. It's often translated as love of fate, which sounds a bit poetic, but it's a really powerful idea. It's about accepting everything that's happened in your life, the good and the bad, and seeing all of it as essential parts of who you are.
So finding meaning in all of your experiences,
Yeah.
even the difficult ones.
Yes, precisely. And this can be a tough one to wrap your head around, especially in a culture that's so focused on success and positivity. Always looking on the bright side.
Right, good vibes only.
Exactly. But Nietzsche's saying there's value in those darker moments too, those challenges that we overcome. They shape us just as much as our triumphs.
So it's like he's saying, don't shy away from those difficult experiences.
Mm-hmm.
Instead, try to understand what they can teach you about yourself.
Yes, exactly. That's something we often miss, don't we, when we're so busy chasing happiness and comfort.
So we've got three very different approaches to finding meaning. And what's really interesting is that they're not mutually exclusive.
Right. You could, in theory, embrace elements of all three.
It's not about finding the one right answer. It's more about exploring different paths and seeing what works for you, what gives your life meaning. It's something that's worth thinking about.
Definitely.
And that leads us to Nietzsche's fourth and final step, how to figure out your true values. But to get there, we have to talk about a pretty intense thought experiment.
Oh, okay. I'm intrigued.
I think our listeners will be too. Let's save it for next time.
Sounds good to me.
All right, so remember that thought experiment I mentioned, the one Nietzsche uses to help us identify our true values.
Yeah, the one that sounded a little ominous.
Exactly. It's called The Greatest Weight. So picture this. You're drifting off to sleep.
Okay, I'm with you.
And suddenly, this demon appears before you.
A demon. Okay, now this is getting interesting.
And this demon, he tells you that you have to relive your life exactly as it is. Every joy and sorrow, every success, and every failure.
All of it.
Over and over again for all eternity.
Wow. Eternity is a long time. I'm not sure I'd be too excited about reliving some of my less than stellar moments.
Right, and that's Nietzsche's point. He's asking, would you embrace this eternal recurrence? Or would you be completely horrified? Because if you're filled with dread at the thought, it might be a sign that you're not living according to your true values.
Wow, that's intense. But it makes you think, doesn't it? It's like a gut check. Am I living a life that I actually value, or am I just going through the motions?
And I think it goes back to that herd mentality we talked about earlier. We might be living out these values that were imposed on us by our families, our culture, maybe even just by what we think society expects of us.
Yeah, it's like we're following someone else's script instead of writing our own. And we might not even realize we're doing it.
Right. The essay gives a great example of this. Imagine someone staying in a toxic relationship, because they feel like that's what they're supposed to do. Maybe they're afraid of being alone or what other people will think.
But they're miserable.
Exactly. And that misery, that feeling of, oh man, I would not want to relive this, that's a sign that something's not right, that they're not being true to themselves. So how do we do it? How do we break free from those external, those unexamined values and figure out what really matters to us?
It's the big question, isn't it? And I don't think Nietzsche gives us a simple, step-by-step guide.
No, because self-discovery, it's not about just checking boxes. It's a journey, right? It's a process that takes time and a lot of honest reflection.
And some courage, too, to really look at ourselves and our choices. It makes me think of that famous Nietzsche quote, "Become who you are."
Right. It sounds so simple.
But it points to something so much bigger. It's about this lifelong pursuit of understanding and embracing our true selves. And that might involve some discomfort, some challenges, even facing parts of ourselves that we might rather avoid. It's not always going to be easy or fun.
No, but there's a potential reward.
Yeah.
That sense of freedom that comes from living a life that's truly authentically yours. One that isn't dictated by those outside pressures or expectations.
Exactly. That's the real prize.
So let me ask our listeners this. What aspects of your life, what moments, what experiences bring you a deep sense of joy and fulfillment. The kind of things you'd gladly relive over and over again.
Right, those moments that make you feel most alive, most like yourself.
And on the flip side, are there parts of your life that you'd hesitate to relive, that feel out of alignment with who you are? Those are tough questions.
They are. And there aren't always easy answers. But that's part of what makes this whole exploration so valuable. It's not about finding those definitive solutions. It's about that ongoing process of questioning and reflecting. And hopefully, through that process, we can start to uncover those true values. The ones that resonate with our authentic selves.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's recap. We've talked about 4 steps that Nietzsche lays out for finding your true self. First, ditch that herd mentality. Stop blindly following the crowd. Second, embrace the difficulty of self-discovery. Acknowledge that it's going to be challenging. Third, find a way to create meaning in a world where those easy answers aren't always there. And finally, take a hard look at your values and make sure they're really yours.
It's a good framework to keep in mind. And it's important to remember these aren't just abstract concepts. They're tools, really, that we can use to navigate our own lives.
And to make choices that are in alignment with who we really are at our core. It's really striking how these 4 steps from Nietzsche's, it's like they build on each other.
Oh, yeah, totally. It's a progression, a journey. Like he's giving us this roadmap.
To find ourselves. And it all starts with that first step, recognizing that herd mentality.
Right. Breaking free from that autopilot, where we just
Right.
blindly follow along with everyone else.
Exactly. And then we can move on to step 2, which
Yeah.
I think you said was probably the hardest.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Because it's about confronting our own resistance. Those patterns and beliefs that we've internalized. The ones that keep us stuck in our comfort zones, even if those zones aren't really serving us.
It can be tough to break out of those patterns. I've definitely felt that in my own life.
Mm.
But the thing is that discomfort is part of the process. It's how we grow. Right?
Absolutely. It's a sign that we're pushing past those limitations, those boundaries that we've set for ourselves.
So we've broken free from the herd. We're ready to face those challenges. And that's when we hit step 3. That big question of how do we find meaning in a world that doesn't always give us easy answers? Especially when we're not looking to religion for those answers anymore.
Right. It's a question a lot of people are asking. And I think Nietzsche's 3 solutions, they offer a really helpful way to approach it, like embracing the humanities, engaging with art and literature, music, all of that. It's like a way to connect with something bigger than ourselves.
It's about becoming an active participant,
Yeah.
not just a passive consumer.
Yeah. Let those things spark your imagination, make you think differently.
And then there's the idea of the Übermensch,
Hmm.
taking responsibility for creating your own values, your own sense of purpose, not just relying on what other people tell you to think or believe.
Right, becoming the author of your own life.
And I love how that connects back to ditching the herd mentality. It's like once we stop looking to external sources for validation, we can really tap into that power.
Yeah, exactly.
And then the third solution, amor fati, love of fate. Embracing all of our experiences, even the difficult ones, as part of who we are.
I think that's a really powerful idea. It challenges that urge we have to control everything, to avoid discomfort. What if we could just accept it all, see even those tough times as opportunities to learn and grow?
That's a big shift in perspective. And it leads perfectly into that 4th step,
Yeah.
Figuring out what truly matters to us.
Right, because if we're not living in alignment with our values, with what we really believe in, that's going to show up in how we experience the world.
You might end up feeling stuck, resentful, maybe even a little lost.
It's like we're living someone else's life, following a script that we didn't write. And that's where that thought experiment, The Greatest Weight, comes in. It forces us to really confront that. Would we want to relive our lives exactly as they are? If not, maybe it's time to reevaluate some things.
It's a powerful reminder that self-discovery, it's not about reaching a final destination. It's a lifelong journey.
Exactly. It's an ongoing process. And I think that's what makes Nietzsche's philosophy so relevant. Even all these years later, he's not offering easy answers. He's inviting us to engage in this deep exploration of ourselves.
And that can be challenging.
Yeah.
But it's also incredibly empowering because we have that capacity to define ourselves, to create meaning in our lives,
Yeah.
to live authentically.
And that's what I want to leave our listeners with. This quote from Nietzsche. He who has a why to live for can bear almost anyhow. So what's your why? What gives your life meaning and purpose? Those are the questions worth exploring. Keep asking them, keep searching, and keep becoming who you are.
Beautifully said. And that's a wrap for this deep dive. Thank you so much for joining us as we explored the world of Friedrich Nietzsche.